Books we read. Books we read.
La 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 la
Hey guys, welcome back to Between the Pages. Today we're joined by Anamika ma'am. She's very fun to talk to and I always learn something new from her every time we chat. Today she's here with a very unique book, Lessons in Chemistry. I have to admit, when I first heard about this book, I thought it might be dull. But after she explained what it's all about, I was hooked. So, what are we waiting for? Let's dive right in and welcome Anamika Dasgupta. If you like today's discussion, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you would like to come on our show as a guest, fill out the form. The link is in the description below. And hey, before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know that we have an Instagram account too. Make sure to follow us for more updates and behind the scenes. Just search Between the Pages _BTP. Can't wait to connect with you guys there. Hello Anamika, welcome to Between the Pages.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
Good.
All right. So, can you tell us about yourself?
I'm a book reader for the last many years. I started reading with, a lot of, a lot of kiddie books and everything. And then I kept graduating to books. And, in our time, we didn't have social media and we didn't have any other distractions, honestly. So if you're bored, you just read a book, right? And so I started just, transitioning from book to book and from genre to genre. And I think over the last, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years is the first time that I don't have a physical book in my hand, and I've realized I've sort of discovered the joys of digital book reading, and it's so empowering. I mean, I know that you don't get the smell of the books and all of that, so you're not really between the pages. You're sort of between screens in a way. But the beauty is that, now at one time I'm like reading multiple books. So instead of carrying everything around, it's all just there in one device. And it's sort of really empowering. And, for a book reader to be able to have access to so many books. But honestly, I don't really have a specific genre that I am reading right now, and definitely not something that you would be so interested in, hearing about. It's a little boring and technical nowadays because of, because of the people that I work with and the type of work that I do. I read up a lot about different kinds of education systems around the world. What are the different types of, and also what are the different types of things I can bring into a class to discuss with you guys. So right now my reading is a little sketchy, but when you told me you wanted me to talk about a book, and I kept thinking, what will be relevant for you. And so actually, Saurav and I really brainstormed a lot, thinking kaun si book ki baat kare, which will not put you to sleep. So I actually came across some of, what do you call these, reels, right? So one of the reels of a series that is, I think, coming up shortly on one of the OTT channels. And it was very interesting, those 30-second reels. And I was like, it looks like a nice story and all, till I came to know that it's actually a book. It's based on a book. So I, quickly went and found that book. And that's the one I thought you might be, we could be on the same page on that one. So hence I sent you Lessons in Chemistry. I don't remember the name of the author, but it was a very refreshingly nice read for me, because I think about 15 years back I used to read a lot of these books. They were very, because they would frame my views and thought process, and my opinions and my approach to a lot of things in life, right? So it was really nice to go back to a similar experience, and I think you guys would really like it.
All right. So, what is this book about? Can you give us a brief?
So it's about this. So it's set in the 60s, in the 1960s, and which is when all around the world, including the West, contrary to popular belief in India. We've always thought that the West has always been progressive and America was always progressive and all that. That's not true, and the US societies had their own challenges in terms of having a very conservative society, with very similar issues as we have heard about in India, about women empowerment and a lot of influence of religion and dogmatic religious practices on society and things like that. So we think कि हमारे country में ही होता है, वहाँ पे नहीं होता था, but वहाँ पे भी था. Okay, so it's about this lady, not girl, but this lady in the 1960s, who's a scientist. Okay, and first of all, that itself sets her apart from, so she's a deep minority in her circles, because most of the girls that she grew up with and most of the women that she interfaces with in society are people who are just women who are just aspiring to, like marry well and have a good house and have good children and bring up children, blah blah blah, right? But she's a scientist, and the whole story is about how she breaks through through the barriers of society that are put on her as a woman, and she does a lot of unconventional things, but not because they are unconventional. She just does it because she follows her heart, right? And the reason why it's called Lessons in Chemistry is because one of the things that she ends up doing, because she's sidetracked in her career, and there's a lot of politics that she faces and things like that, a lot of physical and social abuse that she faces. So one of the things that she does to keep her home and hearth running is that somebody offers her a cookery show. Okay, and they tell her that, can you just sort of just do, teach people how to, because usually it's that afternoon slot ना, हमारे यहाँ पे भी afternoon slot में वो सारे shows आते हैं ना, ladies वाले. So so that the channel tells her that just show this, just do an hour show on because you're a good cook, so just share your recipes and things like that. So it's just women who are going to watch it, and then they'll make pies and all that stuff. And she turns that entire thing into a lesson in chemistry. Okay, and she talks about, so like for example, she never says salt, she always says, and then add a few pinches of sodium chloride. Okay, and her entire show is based on how chemistry is, so how how she makes sense of makes sense of life through chemistry, makes sense of her recipes through chemistry. And in the process of doing that, I think she spent some 2 years doing that, and she hates her job. Okay, she just doesn't like it, she doesn't want to do it, but she's got to do it to keep the home running. But what ends up happening is that she inspires a lot of people and a lot of women. And a woman who who had come to her show, a lot of women actually get inspired, but they speak about a particular case where a woman who had come to her show and asked her some question about the recipe. And then they went on to chit chat during the show, on air. They went on to chit chat, and she came to know that this woman had once aspired to be a doctor. Okay, but then she herself tells, she herself says, but it's a silly dream, and now I'm very happily married, and blah blah blah. And then so she tells her, Elizabeth tells her that, but why, you can still do it, and then she goes on to do it, right? And that's the way she's inspired a lot of people. So that's basically very nicely written and very interestingly put together narrative, and very nice story.
That sounds interesting. And when you were like speaking about the part where she turns the food show into a chemistry thing as well, it reminded me of my old school. We had the same thing. So they gave us recipes, and we had to find the chemistry in it and explain it to them. So it kind of was like nostalgia there. So how did you perceive Elizabeth as the main protagonist there? Like,
I think she was very independent, okay, and very obviously very scared and alone. Okay, and it's not like she's privileged, and it's not like, she also comes from a broken home, and somewhere in the story she reveals that she's seen her sibling commit suicide, and so she also comes from a very like not a very stable and a happy background. So I think what I perceived was that there is really no excuse for, you know, reaching out to your best potential. If you want to do it, irrespective of whether you're from a good home or a troubled home, irrespective of whether you're rich or poor, irrespective of whether you have societal support or not, if you really want to reach out and, achieve something, you would be able to do it, but you need to have the conviction behind it. So I think the two things for her was that stood out for me was her independence and her conviction in her work. Yeah.
I see. And I really love this question. And were there any passages or quotes that stood out to you and resonated with you?
Lots of them. I don't remember any right now. If you want to maybe share it later and all, I'll send it to you. But there were lots of, there was lots of quotes, but I'll tell you one interesting, a very interesting part of the whole story. So she's decided that she wants to make it on her. I mean, she has to make it on her own. Okay, she doesn't have support, and wherever she's found support, she's sort of really that support has backtracked and sort of walked out on her when she needed the most and all. So she decides that मुझे ही करना है सब कुछ. Okay, and then she meets this guy who's a brilliant scientist. Okay, he's also in the same research facility as where she's working. But he's a brilliant scientist. Like he's a it's socially he's also a loner, and he's awkward, and all of that stuff. But as a scientist, he's very good, and he's got a lot of he's got some works that have been submitted for Nobel prizes, and a lot of that stuff. A lot of universities are reaching out to him, and they want him to come and work there, but he works there for some weird reason. Okay, like it's not one of the best research facilities, but there's some backstory and all that. So he works there for some strange reason, and he's also he's what everybody considered a very rude person and unsocial and things like that. So she meets him, and then they fall in love and all of that. But throughout the entire story, she actually fights the possibility of using his name or her association with him to further her own career or things like that. So not only she doesn't use it, she actually fights back when there is a possibility. So when she comes to know that he has spoken on her behalf to the director of the research institute, and that is how she got a call or something like that, she goes and says that I don't want the opportunity. Okay, so that's how fiercely independent she is, because she says I want my story to be all my own. And I think that's something I found very interesting.
All right. What would you do in her case? And like if you were in the shoes of her, would you do something differently?
See, I'll put it like this, okay? The reason why a lot of books resonate with us and some books don't is because what is happening in those books and what the characters are doing in that story is something that we personalize it, right? So we know that we would do the same thing, in a situation like this, or we would like to do the same thing. So, for example, a lot of people might find the story quite ridiculous, and a lot of people might read this part, what I just told you about, and say, "Aisa kaun karta hai?" I mean, why would you do that? Like it's not just some person, right? It's your own, not husband, but your own person, right? Who's firmly on your side. तो वो मदद करना चाहता है तो क्यों नहीं लोगे, right? I mean, why are you being so stubborn? But so a lot of people may not resonate with that. But the fact that someone like you or someone like me will resonate with it, I guess it answers your question.
All right. We have a ritual in this podcast where every guest writes a question for the next guest. So I have a question for you. It's from Dr. Girish Lilani. He's asking, which book has affected you the most in all of these years?
a tough one because there have been so many. I've everything I have got, every perspective I've built in my life is from some book. Okay, I mean, I've been the kind of reader who has, when I used to travel for work, I would always carry books. So this was before the age of digital, right? I would always carry some or the other book with me. Once it so happened that I ended up traveling without a book. Okay, and I was so bored out of my brains that I have even read. I was in the hotel room, and in the hotel room you have that menu card. So I've even read the menu card just because I need to read something before I sleep. Okay. so it's difficult to really remember which book. Mm, but if I were to really, I mean, and again, I'll probably suffer from recency effect because right now I'm reading a lot of this. So I'll probably, tell you something that I've read very recently. So I'm reading a lot of Ismat Chugtai right now. Okay. I think your generation probably doesn't know much about it, and it's
I
very
never
sad.
heard about it.
That's very sad. I'm going to bring it into the school. Don't worry. but Ismat Chugtai was an, I mean, now Indian author at that time India. Okay, undivided India. And at that time, when writing about a lot of things was censored, and women writing about those things though was censored se bhi upar. Okay. She wrote a lot of things that really, that really hit things at the core of the issue.
The elephant in the room.
Huh? Sorry?
There's a term for it, elephant in the room. I learned it recently.
Yeah. So, yeah, so, she would hit at the core of those things. And many times, she was actually pulled up by authorities, and, there was a clampdown on her and everything. But she and the other person, maybe you might have heard about the other guy at least, Sadat Hassan Manto. Okay. So, Ismat Chugtai and Manto. Ismat Chugtai was a lady and Manto was a man. Okay, so we'll go back to basics. Both of them were very, very fiery writers, and they used to write about social, social situations, social norms and evils, challenging the social norms, but through stories, okay, through short stories and very simple formats. And at that point of time, those many years back, Ismat Chugtai has written stories that are, that are raising issues of LGBTQ, and widow remarriage, okay, child marriage, a lot of those things, right? A lot of things that from all kinds of religious texts, whether it is, Islamic or Christian or Hindus, Hinduism. Because the way a lot of texts are translated into what happens in society may not necessarily always be what is actually written in the scriptures, right? So they challenged a lot of those things, and they were hauled up by authorities multiple times, okay, but they just continued to write. So Ismat Chughtai's novels are just mind blowing, and they are more mind blowing considering that it was written so many years back. Yeah. So we'll read a few together.
All right. So it's your turn to write a question for the next guest. Thank you so much for joining us on Between the Pages today. I had a really great time talking books with you. I hope you guys liked today's discussion. Until next time, it's me, Anna Lilani, closing the BDB book for this week. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
la 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 la